Calliope was the daughter of the co-op director, yet in the eyes of her childhood friend Evander, she was just an old maid desperate to get married. He used marriage as a threat, forcing her to get his precious Cressida a job at the co-op. Otherwise, he said, he would just sit back and watch her fail to find a husband and die alone. In a fit of rage, Calliope submitted a marriage application to marry Leander, a battalion commander she had never even met. With that, Evander could finally stay together with his beloved Cressida forever. However, when the organization issued the list for the Down to the Countryside movement, Evander came crying and begging to marry into her family. Mrs. Abernathy, I've thought it over, and I'm willing to marry Leander, Calliope said. Mrs. Abernathy was absolutely thrilled. She immediately grabbed Calliope's hands and started talking non-stop. That's the spirit. My nephew comes from a good family. He's handsome, and he just got promoted to battalion commander. Once you marry him, you can move with the military right away. He's way better than that freeloader, Evander. I'm going to call him right now and have the unit issue your marriage report. Just wait right here for me. Hey everyone, ever had to cut off a childhood friend for using you? Today, we watch Calliope drop her toxic sweetheart and find the man she truly deserves. Let's dive in. With that, Mrs. Abernathy dashed off in a flash, as if she was afraid Calliope would change her mind. Seeing Mrs. Abernathy beaming with joy, the neighbors started teasing Calliope. Callie, what were you whispering about with the matchmaker? Did you finally decide to have Evander marry into your family? Evander, you sure are lucky. There are plenty of handsome guys in our county, but you're the one who managed to catch the eye of the director's daughter. It was only then that Calliope noticed Evander was standing at the edge of the crowd, protectively shielding Cressida and glaring at her coldly. Catching Calliope's gaze, Evander looked visibly annoyed. What nonsense are you all talking about? He snapped at the neighbors. Can't you see Cressida is right here? Calliope, did you do this on purpose just so Cressida would see it? Are you trying to provoke her and make her upset? Cressida, sheltered behind Evander, shed silent tears, looking absolutely heartbroken, which only fueled Evander's protective instincts even more. Calliope, let's get things straight right now in front of everyone, Evander declared. I can marry you, but you have to promise me that after we're husband and wife, we will take care of Cressida for the rest of her life. On top of that, you need to get her a job at your co-op, specifically at the grocery counter. Hearing this, the crowd erupted into an uproar. Callie herself is just a clerk at the hardware counter, someone shouted. You've got a lot of nerve. You open your mouth and immediately demand the grocery counter, which is the most lucrative spot. Mrs. Calloway, who runs the grocery section, is just about to leave to join her husband in the military, and you've already got your eyes on her job. You've got sharp eyes, kid. Cressida blinked her teary eyes and tugged at Evander's sleeve. Evander, she said softly. Actually, any other counter is fine too. I really don't mind. Evander let out a cold scoff and looked over at Calliope from a distance. Don't be afraid, Cressida, he reassured her. As long as I'm here, that grocery clerk position is yours and yours alone. Calliope has been following me around since we were kids. Who else would even marry her besides me? Especially since marrying her means moving into her family's house. What strong, self-respecting guy in this county would ever agree to that? So don't you worry, Cressida. Even if I marry Calliope, my heart will always belong to you. Someone in the crowd couldn't stand listening to it anymore, pointing right at Evander's nose and scolding him for acting so arrogantly while shamelessly taking advantage of the situation. Evander didn't care in the slightest. So what? He retorted. Calliope is the one who insists on clinging to me. Besides, she was born as the co-op director's daughter, while Cressida's family is so poor. It's only right that Calliope takes care of her. Cressida smiled through her tears and shot Calliope a provocative look. Just as Calliope was about to fire back, Mrs. Abernathy suddenly came jogging back. Callie, quick, come with me, she called out. Hearing this, Evander's expression tightened. Evander frowned and instructed, Mrs. Abernathy, my family doesn't have a bride price for her, but her dowry must include a bicycle, a watch, a sewing machine, and a radio, plus $888. And make sure to prepare extra milk candies and Dacron shirts. Cressida is allergic to other fabrics. Hearing this, Mrs. Abernathy was absolutely furious. She spat on the ground, grabbed Calliope's hand, and dragged her toward home. It turned out that Mrs. Abernathy's military officer nephew had returned the call. His name was Leander, and he was currently serving as a battalion commander in the military district. After seeing the photo Mrs. Abernathy had sent him, he was very satisfied and wanted to request a leave of absence to come back and marry Calliope. The thought of rushing into marriage and spending the rest of her life with a stranger left Calliope feeling a bit melancholy and bitter. Actually, ever since she was a little girl, she had always believed she would grow up to marry Evander. In the past, they had always had a great relationship, and he had taken good care of her. The neighbors even used to joke that she was his little wife. But after Cressida appeared, everything changed. The person who had once promised to protect her forever had become repulsive and unrecognizable. Just to make Cressida happy, he would trick Calliope into going up the mountain late at night, ignoring her cries for help and refusing to show his face. All because Cressida had wanted Calliope's new clothes, and when Calliope couldn't bear to part with them, it had made Cressida cry in sorrow. He would force Calliope to hand over the snacks her father had secretly sneaked to her, calling her a pig for eating them, while claiming that Cressida had a frail constitution and just needed the extra nutrition. In his heart, Calliope would never compare to Cressida. Since that was the case, she would marry her battalion commander, and Evander could marry his Cressida. When the time came, she would follow the commander to the military base, and the two of them would be sent down to the countryside together. Perhaps this was just their fate. Weighed down by these thoughts, Calliope tossed and turned all night. Who knew that the very next day, as soon as she walked into the co-op, she would see Cressida squatting on the ground, crying. Seeing her arrive, Evander, who was standing nearby, was absolutely furious. Calliope, you better explain this to me. How did the grocery clerk position get taken by someone else? Calliope was taken aback by his yelling. Every job has its rightful place. Wanda is a relative of Mrs. Calloway, who just left to join her husband in the military. Amy. She took over the position properly. What right do you have to be mad? Evander's face instantly darkened. Did everything I told you yesterday go in one ear and out the other? Hurry up and have your dad fire that person so Cressida can take her place. It was only then that Calliope realized why they were making such a huge scene. A surge of anger rose from the bottom of her heart. Evander, Cressida, don't think so highly of yourselves. You actually think you can be a grocery clerk? You don't even know how to use an abacus. What makes you think you're qualified? Hearing this, Cressida suddenly rushed over and dropped to her knees in front of Calliope with a heavy thud, begging for mercy. If you hadn't promised to give me the job, I wouldn't have skipped the pharmacy recruitment exam to come in early for onboarding. You can't just use your position to bully people like this. Calliope, just because you were born lucky, does that give you the right to joke around with my future? Everyone knew that Calliope's father was the co-op director, and for a moment, the whole crowd started pointing fingers at her. Calliope wasn't about to give Cressida a free pass to smear her reputation. She forcefully shook Cressida off. Don't make it sound like I'm bullying you. There were several top students competing against you for that pharmacy job, and you barely know how to read. Even if you had gone, what good would it have done? The crowd that had just been pointing fingers suddenly burst into laughter. Evander was utterly astonished by Calliope's reaction. It took him a long while to snap out of it, and then he half pulled, half dragged her into a corner. Calliope, are you throwing a tantrum over what happened yesterday? He asked. You know Cressida's health is poor, and she can't handle grievances. If I hadn't said those things yesterday, she would have started crying again. I'll make it up to you, okay? With that, he closed his eyes and leaned his face in with a forced, reluctant expression. I'll give you a kiss right now. Now hurry up and talk to your dad to get Cressida's onboarding done. Calliope was dumbfounded. Evander actually thought she would marry no one but him, that she was madly in love with him, and even felt that kissing her was some kind of sacrifice on his part. A wave of humiliation suddenly washed over her. Without even thinking, Calliope shoved Evander away hard and blindly kicked him a few times. Evander, who do you think you are? She shouted. You're about to be sent down to the countryside to do manual labor, and you still have the nerve to worry about Cressida's job? Evander was startled and quickly brushed the footprints off his clothes. Calliope, what's wrong with you? Mrs. Abernathy was so thrilled. Didn't you ask her to come to my house to propose? Once I marry into your family, who would dare send me to the countryside? Don't try to threaten me with that. Calliope took a deep breath and looked Evander straight in the eye. Evander, what makes you think I have to marry you? Evander frowned and stood up with a self-righteous expression. You follow me around every day. Who in this whole town doesn't know you like me? Besides me, what decent guy would be willing to marry into your family? I suggest you behave yourself right now, or you'll be in for a lot of suffering later. Seeing Evander's completely oblivious and entitled attitude, Calliope gave up completely. Too exhausted to waste another word on him, she turned and walked away. Having failed to get the result he wanted, Evander sulked for a good while before finally going inside to comfort Cressida. Everyone knew they had just had a fight, so they tacitly avoided approaching them to talk. After work, wanting some peace and quiet, Calliope volunteered to stay behind and clean up. However, Evander and Cressida strolled back in. We're here to buy things. Sales clerk, introduce some products to us, they demanded. Calliope knew these two were deliberately looking for trouble while no one was around because she had humiliated them earlier that day, so she completely ignored them. Cressida, dropping her usual innocent, fragile act, started to cause a scene. See? This is what happens when someone is born lucky. The director's daughter doesn't even bother to serve customers who come to buy things. Calliope rolled her eyes in annoyance and pointed at the closed sign. We're off the clock. Unauthorized personnel, please get out. Evander curled his lip. That won't do. The portrait of the great leader at my house is crooked. I must buy nails today. If you don't sell them to me, there's a problem with your ideological awareness. Calliope was infuriated by his words. She threw down her rag and immediately started arguing with them. In the past, when she liked Evander, she always thought everything about him was perfect. Now that she had let him go, she found him utterly repulsive, no matter how she looked at him. In just a few words, she kicked the two of them out of the co-op. Fuming with anger, she locked the doors and went home. Who knew that early the next morning, Calliope would be dragged right out of bed? Calliope, how did you do the inventory? 2 Shanghai brand flashlights are missing, and we're short a box of round nails. Still half asleep, Calliope's mind buzzed. Impossible. I didn't open the counter divider all day yesterday. At this thought, she suddenly froze, then immediately jumped out of bed. In this era, supplies were precious. Normally, the counters had to be boarded up and locked to prevent theft. During business hours yesterday, the counter divider was indeed never opened. But after work, while she was cleaning, she had opened it for convenience. Evander and Cressida had kept pestering and arguing with her while she was cleaning. They must have stolen the items. Calliope stormed out into the street and grabbed the two of them while they were eating sesame flatbreads at a food stall. Have you no shame? She yelled. You failed to scam a job out of me, so now you've resorted to petty theft? Give the stuff back. Evander slammed his bowl down, stood up, and shielded Cressida behind him. You're the sales clerk yourself. Yourself. You steal from your own store and then try to sling mud at someone else. Calliope never imagined that the person she once liked would turn into someone like this. She was so angry that tears fell from her eyes. But Evander vehemently denied ever coming to the co-op yesterday, insisting that he had been helping Cressida practice her handwriting the whole time. When the incident happened, everyone else had already left the co-op, so Calliope had no witnesses to back her up. She had no choice but to take the blame. Even if everyone believed she wouldn't steal, a clerk stealing from their own counter was a serious offense. With something like this happening, even her father couldn't protect her. That afternoon, Calliope was fined 3 times the value of the missing items and fired on the spot. On the way home, her heart ached terribly. She couldn't understand why things had turned out this way. Just then, Evander suddenly blocked her path, his face full of panic. Calliope, the neighborhood committee just notified me to pack my things and go down to the countryside. What is going on? She shook him off in disgust and answered, enunciating every word clearly. You are of age, and your family fits the policy. If you don't go to the countryside, who will? Evander's face went completely white, and he reached out to grab her again. That's impossible! You're an only child! Once I marry into your family, I'll count as the male heir of your household. What right do they have to send me away? This is against the rules. Calliope looked earnestly at Evander's frantic, devastated expression and repeated what she had said to him yesterday. Evander, what makes you think I have to marry you? Evander was deeply triggered by this, his mouth hanging open in shock. But everyone knows you like me. Is it because I've been spoiling Cressida too much lately, and you're jealous? Is it not enough if I keep my distance from her? Callie, I have a weak constitution. How can I go to the countryside to do farm labor? I promise you, from now on, I'll only see Cressida 3 days a week. Stop holding out. Hurry up and tell your dad that you want to marry me, and have the person in charge cross my name off the list. Saying this, he took a step forward, gesturing to pull her into a hug. Before Calliope could even react, Mrs. Abernathy, who had come running over in a hurry, violently slapped Evander's hands away and shoved him so hard he fell flat on his face. Don't you like Cressida? Why are you grabbing and pulling at our Callie? Mrs. Abernathy scolded. Watch out, or her husband will shoot you. Callie, hurry and come home with me to change your clothes. There's wonderful news. Your battalion commander husband is here to pick you up. Evander scrambled awkwardly up from the ground, his mouth wide open as he glared at Mrs. Abernathy. What do you mean by that? You better explain this to me clearly. Who doesn't know that Calliope is my wife? How could you, a matchmaker, promise her to someone else? Mrs. Abernathy shielded Calliope and glared fiercely back at Evander. Stop being so shameless. On my way here, I heard that you and that little fox Cressida bullied Callie together, insisting she stole from her own store. You even ruined her job. Now you're saying Callie is your wife? Where were you before? Hearing this, Evander let out a long sigh of relief. Mrs. Abernathy, now that you put it that way, I understand. After saying that, he reverted to his former arrogant self. Calliope, you bribed Mrs. Abernathy to use this trick to provoke me, didn't you? You don't need to play these petty mind games with me. I said I would marry you, and I will definitely marry you. The only reason I played that trick on you this time was to get back at you for going back on your word and not getting Cressida that job. With that, he gave a cold scoff, tilted his head up proudly, and refused to look at her anymore. I know you're just a young girl in love, and you don't want me interacting too much with Cressida. I understand you, so I'll forgive you this once, but I expect you never to do it again. Since your job position is open now, just arrange to give it to Cressida. She is beautiful and kind-hearted. She won't mind that the hardware counter doesn't have as many perks. Evander clearly had the look of someone handing out charity, just waiting for Calliope to open her mouth and agree. Just then, Cressida, who had been eavesdropping from the sidelines, slipped out and threw herself into Evander's arms, tears streaming down her face. Evander, you don't have to put yourself through this just for me. Evander was thoroughly pleased by this. He let out a dramatic sigh. It's fine. I'm a man. I should shoulder the responsibility of taking care of you. I'm willing to do anything for your future. The two locked eyes, sparks of love practically flying between them. Calliope and Mrs. Abernathy watched this scene in silence before Calliope let out a dry cough. One of you is the eldest son, and the other is the eldest daughter of your families. Instead of going home to pack and prepare to be sent down to the countryside, you're out here being all lovey-dovey? Evander sighed, withdrawing his gaze from Cressida's face, and looked at Calliope as if bestowing a grand favor upon her. Calliope, I can tolerate you pulling this little trick once, but if you keep acting like this, I'm going to get angry. Mrs. Abernathy's face turned green with rage. Our Callie is marrying my nephew, a dignified battalion commander. You're just a loafer who's about to be shipped off to the countryside to do manual labor. Where do you get the nerve to say these things to her? From now on, she'll be a battalion commander's wife, someone you won't even be able to get a glimpse of, let alone be in the same league as. Evander didn't care in the slightest. He just smiled and nodded. All right, say whatever you want. I won't hold it against you. Callie, you should be over your little tantrum by now, right? Calliope felt a heavy knot in her chest. She had no idea how she had been so blind back then to fall for someone like him. Without another word, she grabbed Mrs. Abernathy's arm and walked away. Seeing them leave, Evander smugly called out from behind, "Go cross my name off the list first." Don't hold up important business. Calliope didn't look back, leading Mrs. Abernathy all the way home. Parked right outside her house was an army green Jeep, with 2 guards standing by the doors. Mrs. Abernathy smiled so widely, her face wrinkled up. Callie, look at this. This is the prestige of a battalion commander. After you two get married, your best days are still ahead of you. Calliope awkwardly pinched the hem of her shirt. Initially, agreeing to marry Mrs. Abernathy's nephew, Leander, had been half out of spite. Now that she had completely let go of her feelings for Evander, it belatedly dawned on her that she was genuinely about to marry a stranger she had never even met. What did he look like? Would he be fierce? Would he mistreat her in the future? Once she followed him to the military base, she would truly be leaving her home behind. Caught up in these chaotic thoughts, she found her feet glued to the ground. The guards, their faces full of friendly smiles, first gave them a crisp military salute. Although Calliope was the daughter of the co-op director, she had never experienced a scene like this and momentarily didn't know what to do. Just then, someone took large, confident strides out the door and extended his right hand to her with a warm smile. "Hello, Calliope." "I'm Leander." Leander was tall and well-built, dressed in a crisp military uniform and cap. He carried himself with an imposing, dignified, yet entirely approachable air. Calliope blankly reached out her hand. "Hello, Leander." He was very polite, giving her hand a brief, firm shake before letting go and gesturing to lead her inside. "Callie, Mrs. Abernathy told me about what happened. Since you're going to come with me to the military base anyway, it doesn't matter that you lost that job. However, we can't just let people wrongfully accuse you." Calliope suddenly couldn't take another step, large tears pattering down her cheeks. Before today, she and Leander were merely strangers who had never met, bound by nothing but a verbal marriage agreement. Yet, he was actually willing to. Without even knowing the full story or the context, Leander chose to believe her completely and was even willing to help clear her name. But what about Evander? He had grown up with her, sharing 20 years of their lives together, yet he had personally framed her just to help Cressida vent her anger. In that moment, Calliope suddenly felt she hadn't chosen the wrong person. Seeing her cry, Leander patted his pockets a few times and pulled out a handkerchief. I apologize for bringing up your sad memories, he said gently. Mrs. Abernathy and Calliope's father stood on the sidelines watching, their eyes crinkling with warm smiles. See? I told you Leander was thoughtful, Mrs. Abernathy teased. For a man who leads troops into battle, who else would just happen to pull a silk handkerchief out of his pocket if he wasn't putting his heart into it? Calliope was amused. She looked down closely at the handkerchief. It was brand new. It was obvious he had come across a fabric store on his way here and specifically bought it just for her. Leander looked a bit uncomfortable being teased by everyone. He clasped his hands together and said earnestly, Callie is a girl raised in the warm sunshine. I was worried she might not be used to my rough military habits. Callie, from now on, I will be a considerate husband and take care of your feelings. Please rest assured. After saying that, he snapped his legs together and gave a crisp, standard military salute. Looking at the slight nervousness peeking through Leander's tough exterior, Calliope suddenly felt very reassured. Entrusting her future to a man like this couldn't possibly be a bad thing. Her father was smiling so wide he couldn't even close his mouth. He quickly ushered them inside to eat. At the dinner table, Leander constantly served Calliope food, which brought on another round of good-natured teasing from everyone. After dinner, Mrs. Abernathy and her father urged the two of them to go out for a walk. Calliope knew they were giving them some time to get to know each other, so she didn't decline, ready to show Leander around her hometown. It was only then that she suddenly remembered. Since Leander was Mrs. Abernathy's nephew, he must have grown up around here too. How did he know her well enough to marry her? She had absolutely no memory of him. Hearing her confusion, Leander gave a faint smile. How could you forget? When I was little and mischievous, I climbed a tree to catch birds and tore my clothes. I was too scared to go home, so you sneaked a shirt out of your house for me to change into. I told you that when I grew up and became a big official, I would definitely come back to repay you. But the very next day, my parents moved our family to another town. I've kept you in my thoughts all these years. Calliope was stunned for a moment. Her family had been well off when she was young, and she had always been the leader of the neighborhood kids. She was constantly surrounded by a group of children her age. Raised to be kind-hearted by her parents, whenever she saw them in a tough spot, she would always help them out if she could. She never kept track of trivial things like that, and she certainly never expected anyone to repay her. She had never imagined that Evander, whom she had treated with utter sincerity, would hurt her for Cressida's sake. Yet a tiny seed she had planted entirely by accident was now thriving, bringing her the biggest surprise of her life. A sweet feeling welled up in Calliope's heart, and the distance between her and Leander closed significantly. Just as they were strolling near the co-op, his guard suddenly rushed over, saying there were urgent letters that Leander needed to handle. Wanting to take one last, long look at the co-op where she had grown up before she moved away, Calliope decided not to follow him back right away. Who knew that as soon as she walked through the doors, she would run into Evander and Cressida again? When the two saw her, their faces were filled with disdain and mockery. Is it done yet? We've been waiting for you forever. Evander sneered. We've already lowered our demands. Calliope, don't tell me you can't even handle a small thing like this? Calliope rolled her eyes in exasperation. When did I ever agree to your demands? Cressida, there are plenty of people eyeing my hardware clerk position. Did you really think framing me would make it fall right into your lap? Who do you think you are? Calliope retorted. Seeing everyone's eyes turning toward them, Cressida reverted to her usual fragile demeanor. Callie, I know you've been targeting me because of Evander, but no one can control matters of the heart. It's not my fault. How could you repeatedly play tricks on me just because of this? Calliope, you have to sort out a job for me. Calliope curled her lip. Miss, we're not related or friends. What exactly makes you think I am obligated to arrange a job for you? And as for you, Evander, I'm getting married very soon. Please keep your distance from me from now on. Don't come looking for a scolding every other day. The crowd burst into laughter. Evander's face stiffened. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? My patience has a limit. I can coddle you once or twice, but I won't do it every time. Calliope, if you dare to keep acting so unreasonably, I'll let you be an old maid for the rest of your life. Cressida, looking incredibly smug, chimed in sweetly to mediate. Evander, I think Callie is just trying to play hard to get before the wedding so she can control you later. You absolutely must not spoil her and let her develop such awful habits. Evander deeply agreed. He walked straight over and grabbed 2 boxes of malted milk extract and some milk candies from the shelf. Hurry up and pay for these. Consider it compensation for offending Cressida today. The crowd's eyes gathered on Calliope again, waiting to see her make a joke of herself. Right at that moment, Leander strode over with his guards. Comrade Callie, I'm sorry I'm late. Seeing the insignia on his military cap, the crowd gaped in shock and started whispering among themselves. Leander completely ignored them, turning instead to Evander. Why should my wife pay for the things you're buying? Evander was utterly dumbfounded. Since when is she your wife? Who are you, and what are you trying to do? Beside him, Cressida was just as shocked. Your wife? Are you talking about Calliope? Who in this entire county doesn't know she follows my Evander around like a lost puppy? How could she possibly marry you? Leander's expression darkened, but instead of getting angry, he laughed. I just finished having drinks with my father-in-law to settle the wedding date. What, are you trying to steal the bride of a battalion commander? At this, the crowd that had just been secretly poking fun at Calliope erupted into an uproar. Callie is so lucky. She's actually marrying a battalion commander. This commander is really handsome. His presence is leagues above Evander's. If Evander can't marry Callie, doesn't that mean he has to go down to the countryside? Tisk, tisk, tisk. Handed a massive stroke of good fortune, and he couldn't even grasp it. What a joke. Evander stared in disbelief at Leander and the guards behind him. Leander cast a sidelong glance at Evander, then leaned slightly toward Calliope. I'm truly sorry. It was inconsiderate of me. I should have left the guards with you. I just never expected that in broad daylight, there would be people begging on the streets of your town and acting so outrageously at that. The crowd roared with laughter. Evander's face turned green from the sarcastic remark. Callie, what exactly is going on here? How could you suddenly get married without telling me? Did you even consider where this leaves my pride? Cressida quickly assessed the situation, took a step away from Evander, and looked up at Leander with tearful eyes. I'm sorry, you might have misunderstood. It's Callie who relied on her family's influence, promising me a job twice, and then going back on her word, leaving me with nowhere to go. Hearing this, Calliope looked at Leander a bit nervously, waiting for his reaction. Leander frowned. Leander looked at Cressida with an expression like he was looking at an idiot. Miss, if you want a job, you can fight for it with your own abilities. Why are you harassing my wife? My wife is just a minor clerk, and she was just fired because she was framed. She can't even protect herself. So, why should she help you? This behavior of yours, baselessly accusing others, is crossing the line. I'm definitely going to write a report back to the military district to ask where you learned this habit of trying to ride on people's coattails. Cressida, who had always been good at flirting with men and directing vicious words at Calliope, was completely dumbfounded upon hitting such an unyielding brick wall. Didn't you understand? She cried. She caused me to lose my job. You need to wake up, Leander replied coldly. You never had a job in the first place. If you had the ability to find a job on your own, no one could ruin it for you. But trying to morally blackmail my wife is just wrong. Being yelled at and put in her place, Cressida's eyes turned red once again. Evander's heart ached at the sight, and he quickly stepped up to defend her. Why are you protecting Calliope like this? She's just a vicious woman. She only agreed to marry you to piss me off. Believe it or not, if I just crook my finger, she'll dump you immediately. As soon as those words left his mouth, Evander flew several feet backward, crashing directly into the wall of the co-op. The impact knocked a layer of dust off the framed pictures hanging on the wall, showering his head and face with dirt. Everyone gasped in shock. Only Calliope stood frozen in place, her heart tightening slightly. It was true. Everyone knew she used to have feelings for Evander. In an era that placed the utmost importance on a woman's reputation, what if Leander grew disgusted with her because of this? What would she do with the rest of her life? Taking a deep breath, she wanted to explain herself to Leander. I really did treat Evander as my childhood sweetheart in the past. I don't want to hide this from you. Before she could finish, Leander interrupted her. You said it yourself. That was in the past. I don't care about that. What I care about is that you were wronged. You kindly helped others, but they turned around and bit you, and now they want to use this to ruin your reputation. Cressida hurried over to help Evander up. The two exchanged a glance and decided to slip away. But the guards didn't give them the chance, stepping right up to block the door. We've investigated, one of the guards stated. In your statement, you claimed you were helping Cressida practice her handwriting that day, but no one at the library saw you. Not only that, but we also found a witness who saw the two of you enter the co-op after closing time. Cressida shuddered in fear and quickly turned to Evander for help. Evander was also completely dumbfounded. Calliope has already been fired. Why are you still digging into the past? Calliope, did you instigate them to investigate me? You truly are a venomous woman. The crowd hadn't believed that a well-off clerk like Calliope would take the risk of stealing from her own store just for 2 flashlights anyway. Now, they all pointed their fingers at the two culprits. So it was you two scheming against Callie. When you couldn't get the position, you ruined her job so you could take her place. You two are so shameless. After all the ways Callie looked out for you in the past, you're nothing but ungrateful wolves. Evander and Cressida stood there, with their mouths agape, unable to defend themselves. Cressida pulled out her signature move, sobbing and weeping pitifully. No, I didn't steal anything. I just accompanied Evander to buy things. Maybe he just forgot to pay. Evander's face twisted in fury. Stop spouting nonsense. It was all your idea. Why are you pushing the blame onto me now that things have gone south? If it weren't to get you a job so you could avoid being sent down to the countryside, would I have gone through all this trouble with you? Cressida was used to being coaxed by Evander, so she couldn't stand being treated with such a cold face by him. Evander, you originally said you were going to get me a grocery clerk position. It's your own incompetence. That's why I lowered my expectations and settled for Calliope's hardware counter job. Now you haven't managed to do anything, so what gives you the right to yell at me? The two of them argued fiercely, while everyone else watched coldly from the sidelines. People in this era valued unity above all else, and what they hated most was stealing and destroying collective property. Evander and Cressida's reputations in the town were now completely ruined. Just as the two were tearing at each other, the neighborhood committee director rushed over. Hey, we're just waiting on you two. Instead of packing your things properly and getting ready to hit the road, what are you doing causing a scene here? Evander and Cressida both froze at the same time. It was only then that they remembered that without Calliope's protection, they were going to be sent down to the countryside to do manual labor. Evander completely panicked. He shoved Cressida aside and sprinted right in front of Calliope. Callie, you can't just erase everything I've done for you in the past over one little mistake. Are you really so heartless as to let me be sent to the countryside? Leander stepped directly in front of Calliope, shielding her. Brother, think carefully before you speak. Having fought on the front lines for years, Leander possessed an imposing aura that commanded respect even without him getting angry. Intimidated by his presence, Evander softened his tone but continued to beg. Callie, can't you just show a little mercy? We've known each other for over a decade. How can I not compare to this man you've only met once? Naturally, Cressida didn't want to go to the countryside either. She threw herself forward and joined in the pleading. In the end, they were personally escorted onto the truck bound for the countryside by the guards. When Calliope and Leander were walking home, they happened to pass by the large truck taking the youths to the train station. Everyone else on the truck had looks of hope for the future. Only Evander and Cressida were sobbing, their faces streaked with tears and dirt. Calliope chuckled inwardly. Evander had always wanted to stay together with Cressida forever. Now, their wish had finally come true. Not long after, Calliope and Leander held their wedding in the town. He was always thinking of her. They could have just had one ceremony at his military base, but he was afraid her fellow townsfolk wouldn't get to see her looking her most beautiful. So, he insisted on using his own salary to fund 2 separate weddings. Amidst the lively celebration on the day of the wedding, Calliope's father brought out his treasured aged wine. Grabbing her hand, he shed tears continuously. Daughter, Dad was so worried that your heart was completely tied to that little bastard. Seeing you finally figure things out puts my mind completely at ease. From now on, when you go to the base with Leander, live a good life. Dad has prepared a bountiful dowry for you. Whenever you have the chance, you must come back and visit. Leander let out a light laugh. Dad, I'm marrying Callie, not kidnapping her. Whenever she wants to come back, I'll have someone escort her anytime. Receiving this promise, her father's old tears flowed freely. The crowd was crying and laughing all at once. Just then, a postman held up a letter. Calliope, there's a letter for you. She wiped her tears and took the letter, only to see the name she wanted to see least, Evander. In the letter, Evander first complained extensively about the harsh conditions in the countryside. Then, his tone abruptly shifted, telling her not to marry Leander and urging her to marry him quickly instead, so she could bring him back from that remote mountain village. At the end of the letter, Evander specifically emphasized that he had finally thought things through. He claimed that treating Cressida well had just been a moment of confusion, and that he only had Calliope in his heart. If she could get him transferred back, he swore he would never see Cressida again for the rest of his life. Calliope skimmed through it quickly, and casually tossed the letter into the fire brazier. Sending her this kind of letter on her wedding day, what terrible luck. The day after the wedding, Calliope packed her belongings and followed Leander back to the military base. Contrary to what she had imagined, there were many military spouses living there. Moreover, Leander had already sent wedding candies back in her name to distribute among them, helping her build good relationships with everyone in advance. Calliope teased Leander that he was as meticulous and detail-oriented as a little girl. He, however, replied that thinking ahead for his wife was simply the correct strategy. Their days passed in this peaceful and steady manner, with every day feeling fulfilling and happy. When Calliope returned home to visit her father during the holidays, she heard news about Evander and Cressida from her former childhood friends. They told her that after she left, Evander had sent multiple letters back. Without exception, they were all asking her to find a way to get him transferred back home. Annoyed by his constant pestering, her father had picked up a pen and written back, telling him that she had followed Leander to the military base and was now a battalion commander's wife. He told Evander to spend his time planting more crops and to stop wasting postage stamps. After that, Evander went silent for a while. Eventually, he sent a letter to his own family, saying that his life was hopeless and that he and Cressida had accidentally slept together. Cressida was now pregnant, and he hoped his family would support their marriage. Evander's parents were not easy people to deal with. They already despised Cressida for ruining Evander's future, so no matter what Evander said, they flat out refused to agree. In the end, the two of them couldn't get married. In a desperate attempt to abort the baby, Cressida recklessly consumed various random herbal medicines, which ended up leaving her paralyzed on one side of her body. The place where they had been sent in the remote northwest was so isolated that it was hard to find even a basic rural doctor. Cressida became bedridden, yet she still failed to lose the baby. Because of this, she and Evander fought day and night. In a fit of rage, Evander actually ran away. Penniless and without any skills, he tried to hop a freight train heading south to try his luck. However, it was a pitch-black, windy night. The train driver didn't see anyone by the tracks at all. The intense wind generated by the speeding train swept Evander right into the wheels, instantly crushing him to death. With Evander gone, Cressida lost all remaining hope. Dragging her paralyzed legs, she hanged herself from a doorframe. Hearing how the two of them ended up, Calliope couldn't help but sigh with mixed emotions. Seeing her lost in thought, her father immediately told everyone to stop talking. "Stop bringing up those two unlucky fools," he scolded. "My daughter is now pregnant with Commander Leander's child. She needs to be treated with care right now. She shouldn't be listening to this kind of morbid nonsense." It was only then that the crowd noticed her slightly rounded belly, and they all quickly began offering their congratulations. Before they could even finish speaking, Leander suddenly pushed his way through the crowd. "Honey, I missed you and the baby so much. I took a leave of absence to come keep you company," he said. Looking at the beads of sweat on his forehead, everyone laughed. Calliope laughed too. It turned out that, without even realizing it, she had chosen the very best ending for herself.
What a perfect ending! Evander and Cressida's karma finally caught up to them. Calliope proved that walking away from toxicity is always a win, and real love protects you. Thoughts?